Welcome to Immigration Talk with Attorney Anish. Attorney Anish is an immigration lawyer who has been certified as a specialist in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California's Board of Legal Specialization.
Hello, everyone. This is Anish Vashista, and you are watching or listening to Immigration Talk with Attorney Anish. It's Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and this is my fifth recording in a series relating to the immigration issues that are facing people and companies during the COVID-19 crisis. Most of the videos have just been through screen sharing where you could see my monitor and what I've been looking at online. But I wanted people to be able to see me because I feel it might help when we're discussing today's topic, which is the new executive order issued by President Donald J. Trump that's going to go into effect here in a few hours. And the first thing I wanted to note about the executive order, because when it was first tweeted about and when there was a lot of anticipation about it, and finally when the text came out yesterday, there has been a lot of uncertainty as to what it's going to actually cover. And so I wanted to briefly discuss that. This is not going to be a long video. Basically, the executive order prohibits people from entering the United States as immigrants. So what does that mean? It means it applies to people who are outside of the United States. If you're already inside the United States, then it does not apply to you unless you're planning on departing the United States and trying to come back in. It also does not apply to you if you are not trying to come back in or trying to enter the United States as an immigrant. What does that mean? It means you are trying to enter the United States so that you can obtain permanent residency. Now, let's break that down a little bit more. If you're coming here on a fiancé visa, or if you're coming here on an H-1B visa and you have an approved I-140 for you, or if you're coming here on some other type of non-immigrant visa and you later decide that you want to pursue adjustment of status and you're legally permitted to do so, then that's not being covered by the executive order. What is covered are people who are waiting outside the United States for their visa interviews to get their immigrant visas, whether they're family-based or employment-based or some other basis, so that they can enter the United States and be permanent residents upon entry when they enter on those visas. So those people are the ones who are not going to be able to come into the United States for at least 60 days from now or from today, because that is what the executive order states. The purpose of the executive order is to protect the rights of the U.S. domestic worker population, to protect the domestic labor force. And so in the president's wisdom, he has concluded that to do that during the crisis, he must not permit permanent residents or not permit immigrants from coming to the United States and becoming permanent residents immediately upon entry and therefore entering the workforce almost immediately upon entry. There are exceptions to that, and so I want to kind of go over those. The executive order actually is pretty clearly written, and so I advise anyone who wants to go online to take a look at it. It might be beneficial. What it basically says is that if you are an immigrant and you don't yet have an immigrant visa and you don't have any other type of travel document and you're not in the United States, then you're not going to be able to get in. So the exceptions are going to be, of course, people who already have their immigrant visas. So say like you went to a consular interview recently and you got issued the visa. That immigrant visa, say, is still valid. You can use that to enter the United States, provided there are no other obstacles in your way, such as if you're trying to come in from Europe or you're trying to come in from a country that currently has a specifically designated ban. But if your immigrant visa has already been issued, then this rule does not apply to you. This executive order doesn't apply to you. It also does not apply to you if you are the spouse or child of a United States citizen, or if you are coming to be adopted by a United States citizen and you're under 21. It doesn't apply to you if you're coming in under the EB-5 investor program. You can still get your immigrant visa that way. It doesn't apply to you if you're coming in as a special immigrant. So there are a number of exceptions, and then there are some that are very specific, and then there are some more generalized ones where there's a law enforcement requirement. So that's kind of in the middle. If there's a law enforcement agency that wants you to enter, even though you would be otherwise banned, it's hard to imagine such a scenario, but I imagine, theoretically speaking, that could happen. And then there's also a national interest type exception, which I would largely say is the waiver basis that the courts have said that the president's travel bans had to have. And so if you don't meet any of the other exceptions, um, then you can claim that there's a national interest for you to be issued the immigrant visa. Now, this ban is largely going to be enforced by the Department of State, where if your visa interview is even scheduled during the next 2 months, and a lot of these consular posts worldwide, these U.S. embassies and consulates are not issuing visas currently because of the crisis. But if they were to reopen within the next 2 months, and you are applying for an immigrant visa, then this executive order could be used to deny you the visa, at least for the duration that the executive order is in effect. It could be extended, or it could just end at the 60-day mark. We don't know yet. But you would need to then argue or claim that one of the exceptions applies to you, and that could be the case. You could claim that you're trying to get your immigrant visa based on marriage to a United States citizen, or maybe you're trying to get your immigrant visa based on some other category, but you happen to be married to a United States citizen. You don't even have to, per the text of the order, you don't have to be pursuing the immigrant visa based on the marriage to the U.S. citizen in order to qualify for the exception. So in large part, the I imagine the consulate or the embassy will know already whether or not one of the exceptions applies to you, but maybe there are circumstances where they wouldn't know. So you want to make sure that if you're filling out a DS-260, which is the online immigrant visa uh, application that's going to be submitted to the National Visa Center, that you want to include whatever information you can to show that you meet one of the exceptions to the executive order. You also want to upload any documents into the National Visa Center um, website when you're uploading your civil documents or your affidavit of support, if it applies. You want to provide any evidence to show that one of the exceptions applies to you. The more the consular officer has in front of him or her at the interview, the better. Now, if we are seeing situations where interviews are not even being scheduled in the first place, then we'll need to contact the consular post directly, or possibly the National Visa Center, to get the interview scheduled based on one of the exceptions applying. Uh, so that's what we know so far. I think the executive order is going to affect a lot of people, but it's not going to affect as many people as we thought. Most importantly, people who are already in the United States and pursuing adjustment of status, they're not going to be affected. People pursuing non-immigrant visas outside the United States are not going to be affected. So those are all important things to take into account. Now, there could be another executive order that's issued that's more restrictive, and we have to be aware of that. Um, and when that comes out, I'll review that and I'll try to post another video about it. But for now, I hope this video has been helpful for people to understand what exactly they're facing, whether the executive order applies to them, and if it does, whether one of the exceptions applies to them, and if it does, how one can go about making those exceptions known to the relevant U.S. State Department embassy or consulate, so that they can still be issued the immigrant visa, um, even though the executive order is still in effect. Anyway, as always, please feel free to reach out to my office or to me to let me know what questions you want answered during this crisis period. I'm happy to look at any ideas people have so that I can try to be of assistance during this very difficult time. And again, thank you for watching or listening.